Hello and welcome to today's video. We're taking a trip to one of my favourite places, which is kind of a weird thing to say considering where it is, to the Underhive. I've had a lot of ideas recently about using the material from coat cans to be able to make terrain, and in this one I've made some crushable crates, which is really ideal for Necromunda. A simple idea is just to use this material and use the standard kind of cardboard box templates. I'm sure we've all done this at some point, particularly at school, where you trace out the outline with the tabs and you fold it to make the crates. This has come out really well and I'm really impressed with how simple this was to do, and again it's a great simple little building technique to add variety and something that can be very unique because each one can be destroyed and bent in essentially an infinite different amount of ways. Anyway, with that little ramble out of the way, we'll get on to the video. So first, take your material, and then for this one I'm using a 25mm stencil just to try and keep the shape nice and square. So after roughly laying out the dimensions that I wanted, I started using the back of a hobby knife just to etch in the square. Now at this point I'll point out I think this is probably not the best tool to use for this. I actually switched later on, and a couple of others that I've made since, into using something that's a bit more blunt, even though it is the back of the blade itself. I switched to using like a sculpting tool, just the back side of that. It's less sharp, it doesn't gouge in as deep, because I did have some issues when actually folding the joins. They were snapping because it had put too much pressure and cut through too far, but I have found with like a hobby tool that it didn't happen. So I'd recommend something along those lines, even a butter knife, just to be able to etch in the pattern that you want without actually cutting through the material or making it weak enough that it snaps when you bend it. Now the last square etched in, it's starting to look something like we want. Now the idea for this is we want to cut around the outside of the shape itself, but leave the joins intact so we can fold along the lines. You can see here as well I'm adding some tabs on just on the edges that will connect to each other, so then you can glue them together and keep it in shape. So you can see here I'm just finishing off one of the tabs, and the next step is I'm going to rescore back around the outside just to be able to peel this out from the aluminium sheet itself. Because the material is quite soft and flexible, going over and just rescoring delicately around the outside just lets you peel it out like this. You can just literally tear it from the sheet. After it's been freed from its aluminium sheet prison, it'll look something like that. We can get on with actually bending it into shape. Slowly and delicately fold along the edges, fold the tabs in first and then just work along in a methodical pattern, just making sure you get every angled corner. Eventually it'll start coming together in all its cubey glory. Now I'm just taking some strong super glue and just gluing it together using the tabs that we'd already cut in just to fix it into the crate shape. Again, this is one of those where I wish I hadn't started doing this whilst I had gloves on, because my gloves did get stuck to it. So PSA again, don't do this while you're wearing gloves. Now because I overscored this, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I've actually made a little patch to be able to put this as a proper cube. You can do the same if the same thing happens, like it's not exactly an expensive material to be able to fix up the boxes. Same idea, just a 25mm square with some tabs on the bottom that I've just folded up. I'm going to slot on the inside to be able to fix it and make the full cube crate. And there we have one roughed out cube. It's looking a bit weak in places, so what I've decided to do, and I have done this on a couple of the ones that I've done, is I make some braces out of just some spare leftover material. Just literally cut a small shape, score down the middle, and make an L shape so it fixes around the corners. This does two things. It adds strength to the overall cube, and also adds a bit of detail on the outside. So there we have a fairly finished cube, but now it is time for the fun bit. So like the cube on the right, we can start bending, crushing, tearing, puncturing to your heart's content to make something that looks a bit more unique and a bit more war-torn, aged and underhive looking. As always with something like this, it's personal choice how far you go, and because these are relatively inexpensive, there's no harm in making another one that looks even more damaged or less damaged depending on what your take is. At this point I was happy with how this one was coming along, so I stopped here and turned my attention to give it a nice bashed up paint job. So after a good solid base coat and wash and, you know, standard kind of weathering and a few transfers for a change, this is what they look like. Being 25mm high, they are perfect scatter height terrain, just enough to be able to hide behind, and I think they look great. So there we have my little guide on how to make some crushable crates. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a go and tag me in it. I love to see what everybody comes up with. As always, I'll see you next time.